Hey guys, it's Vocal Pineapple, and today we're going to be talking about how Bakugo returns in My Hero Academia Chapter 364. Let's get to it after that intro. Hit it! So once again, thank you to Rukusu, Justice, and everyone else who is taking part in, revealing the information going on weekly with My Hero Academia. This week, we're going to be reading from Rukusu's summary once again, so let's get started and get straight into the mayhem. The chapter begins with a flashback of the Doctor explaining that the bullets Shigaraki stole from Overhaul were made based on a person's quirk, and that it kind of confirms the quirk doomsday theory. He would then proceed with his researches to extract it. Now, we know that the Doctor wasn't entirely, I'm sure, aware of the area situation going on, right? Like, I'm sure they had some knowledge of everything that was happening, but I don't think he had full details like what was narrated to us when we saw Shisaki's backstory and Eri's backstory, right? So him figuring out, oh, this kind of quirk erasing bullet is based on someone's quirk. So technically, we could in some way extract that information and put it into you, right? That is very, very interesting, and I really want to know more about the Doctor's whole thing with quirk science in general. We know that he was able to copy quirks through some sort of means, right? And he often refers to quirks in terms like data and RAM and stuff like that. So he really makes it seem like there's a more technological side to quirks that we haven't really explored much in this series. And as the guy who created the quirk doomsday theory, I think he'd be an authority in being the kind of person who would say, well, yeah, this more or less confirms that my theory is right. And at this point in the story, it's not really much of a question whether or not the quirk singularity is going to happen, right? It's more like a when. All of this was contained in a recording left along with his new mask, All For One's new mask, which All For One collected as soon as he left Tartarus. The next page shows him fully restored, saying Endeavor should feel proud that he made him use this risky card. Now, a lot of people were wondering, All For One did say that heroes aren't the only ones who can do sacrificial plays, right? So we knew that there was going to be some sort of drawback to him rewinding himself back to Prime, right? But it's kind of hard to imagine what that would be, because this is the All For One that took on Prime All Might, right? So what sort of drawback could they possibly do? Well, interestingly enough, in this chapter, we are quickly about to find out what that weakness is. However, before we get to that, we see what Tokoyami's doing, where Tokoyami realizes right away that this has something to do with Eri. He very much understands, oh, this is rewind, right? This is a whole rewind thing going on, or at least understands that from All For One's dialogue, right? And then we have Hawks noticing that All For One is diving down very quickly to where the other heroes are, and he tries to follow All For One down there, but he's not nearly fast enough, as All For One has already stolen the clothes off of one hero and the quirk of another, who he holds from the back by the neck. Now here's where All For One's weakness comes in. All For One says that using rewind is his final play, because his body will eventually disappear. But he's not bothered by this at all, because the baton has already been passed to Shigaraki. What he has to do now is finish off as many heroes as possible. So back in the Overhaul arc, we do remember the one instance of Eri apparently rewinding someone so far back, right, through their body that they became nothing. She pretty much rewinded somebody into nothingness, right? And that's more or less what's going to happen to All For One eventually over the course of this fight. I think eventually we're going to see like young All For One or baby All For One, because he's going to keep like kind of going through a Benjamin Button syndrome here and reverse aging all the way until he's literally nothing. So I wonder if at some point we get a trash talking baby just standing amongst Endeavor and Hawks' corpse, right? That would be kind of nuts. But regardless, it seems like All For One has a version of rewind that he has absolutely no control over, right? Like at the very least, they took the actual quirk data for what the quirk was from the quirk erasing bullet, but they weren't capable of like having a perfect copy of the quirk like Eri, right? Where he would have a horn and everything, and then he could then build up power and use it that way. It just seems like it's a one-time activation and there's no way to turn it off, right? Which is very unfortunate for All For One, but he says he's not really bothered by it, so that's kind of interesting. You would think that All For One, who's been clinging to life so hard over the course of the series, would definitely want to stick around, but I mean, he pretty much does consider the other All For One inside of Shigaraki as himself, right? So even though they're not literally linked in that way, it's cool to see him pretty much saying, hey, my clone over there is going to do everything that I wanted to do, so honestly, I'm really not all that bothered by dying. From there, we randomly cut to Washington, D.C. in America in the world of My Hero Academia, and we see General Agpar, which if you remember from the Star and Stripes versus Shigaraki little mini arc that we had, is one of those American characters, right, who was part of the team that allowed Star and Stripes to come to America, and is also a Star Wars parody, by the way, right? Because Horikoshi loves doing those. General Agbar is talking to the president, and he says that they need to take this opportunity now to finish off Shigaraki. Outside of the White House, though, there are protests and destruction, including a sign that says, "We are all for one." So clearly the state of things in America is not looking too great. We know that crime all around the world was generally worse than Japan anyway, because Japan had All Might for so long. But after the massive prison breaks and everything that All for One did, you would think that Japan was kind of worse off than everyone, right? Because they have villains running rampant. But it seems like the news that All for One has broken out, and the news of everything that's happened in Japan, and the news of everything that happened with Star and Stripes has really gotten to the American populace and populaces in other countries, and it's really starting to form some sort of societal collapse, right? Where people are just kind of giving into anarchy and going insane of their quirks and trashing the streets. And it's really something how My Hero Academia keeps delving into this kind of weird political realm, right? I'm definitely enjoying the sort of Game of Thrones aspect of hearing about how different countries are kind of worried about Shigaraki to the extent of, well, let's read the spoiler exactly. So the exact words are, the president says that America is also in danger and that the quirk research centers say that Shigaraki is invincible. So he imagines that a political conflict right now will begin in which the leaders of the first world countries will fight for Tamura's trust. So it sounds like they have effectively 100% given up on Japan being able to stop Shigaraki, right? The whole world has given up on the idea that Japan is going to be able to do anything to stop Shigaraki or All for One, and they've pretty much started to get into a mode where it's like, all right, well, if he comes over here, we have to get on his good side. So maybe we're going to do something to set ourselves apart from America and maybe offer them something that they could use or they could want here, or free passage here. And everyone's pretty much going to be trying to bend the knee to Tamura Shigaraki, right? Which is very much part of All for One's plan, right? Like being in charge of all the resources and all the countries in the entire world. It seems like it definitely is possible and definitely is in sight with the way that the other countries in My Hero Academia are acting. But then Agbar tries to argue reasonably, saying that Shigaraki won't stop after he starts taking away people's freedoms. But the president says that they've tried everything they had. Then, when it seems like the discussion is about to end, Agpar shouts, "That monster cannot exist in our future." Pretty much saying, look, this is our only chance to do anything about this. If this guy makes it overseas, I can't allow that to happen, right? Like, I have a family here. There's people here that I care about. My whole life is here. Things are bad enough as they are. I'm not letting that guy come here. So, Mr. President, you can tell me whatever you want to say about anything, about we can't do this or that, but I would rather lose everything fighting him over there than lose everything fighting him over here, because what I have to lose over here is way more precious to me. Agpar then shows the picture of Little Star and Stripes and questions the president on whether or not he understands why she accepted death. It was because she wanted to see today's youth becoming adults, and because it's the role of adults to support the new generation. And very interestingly enough, on the page in the manga, we actually see, as he says this, All Might reaching his hand towards Star and Stripe. It's kind of like an interesting visual because they never got to meet. And then Star and Stripe, in turn, reaches her hand out towards the future, right? Towards a big, kind of bright white light, or a big bright light in general, right? Very much like what Deku was looking at, where he saw All Might standing in the first opening. They're reaching out, and that's kind of what both of their sacrifices and both of their trials against All for One and Shigaraki were all for, right? Like, Star and Stripe was happy dying over the sea of Japan, knowing, hey, at least he's not going to America. At least I did what I could, and maybe I provided some sort of weakness so that people here can take care of him, and I'm gonna have faith in you, One for All. I'm gonna have faith in you, All Might, and you guys can do something about this. And Agbar is very much making the same argument, right? Like, it's better for us to die over there than to let him come over here, where we have the next generation being raised up. You know, it's already bad enough that the next generation in Japan has to deal with all the Shigaraki stuff. We could talk about the child soldier things and all that, but like, we can't let that happen over here, pretty much is the selfish American mindset, right? Like, oh, that's okay if it happens over there. Let's go tear that country up. But over here, we can't let that happen. We got things that we care about over here. Agbar's speech finishes by saying that this reason is exactly why heroes use their powers. And then the focus shifts back to UA, and we see Edgeshot doing something that a lot of us were not expecting him to suddenly pull out at this stage of the story. Edgeshot says that he already has experience in entering people's bodies and that it's too soon to give up on Bakugo. He starts extending very thin parts of his body into Bakugo's chest, and then he asks Mirko to hold Shigaraki in the meantime, even if she dies in the process, and says that he'll not accept Bakugo's death and that they can't let this stopped heart lead to the end of a life. So despite there being no clear way to save Bakugo before, Horikoshi has decided to allow Edgeshot to come in and pretty much take over the parts of Bakugo's chest and heart that were lost and effectively become his brand new heart. And he knows by doing this that he's going to be sacrificing himself, right? He literally tells Genis, hey, I'm not going to be able to come back from this, so I'm going to leave it all to you. And then we see a screenshot of the both of them back in their UA high years and everything. But that effectively is how the chapter ends, right? With Edgeshot turning into Bakugo's new heart. Now, I have some thoughts on this development in My Hero Academia, but I definitely think I'm going to save that for a separate video, right? I'm going to save that. I'm going to gather that. Right, let's just gather and sit in what just happened and how Bakugo ended up being saved, right? It wasn't quite the best Genis muscle fiber theory, but it literally might as well have been, right? So let's all sit in this and we'll discuss it likely in the morning once I've had some time to stew on Horikoshi's decisions. So I'll see you guys later. It's Pineapple. Love ya. Thank you to Rukasu. Thank you to everyone involved in the spoilers. And yeah, what did you guys think of the chapter? What did you guys think of everything going on? And where do you think we're going to be going next week in My Hero Academia? Are you excited for what happened? Are you happy about what happened? Are you miserable? Did you figure it out beforehand and call it yourself? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you there. Peace.